Ed Ruth, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Indeed. How was your month of Croatia, man? I saw you guys were just taking in the sights, eating the good meals. How was it?
It was awesome. It was a completely different experience. It always is when you go overseas, but it was really chill. We were out in Supetar, which is an island that's one of the islands that's off of the coast of Croatia that sits like in the Adriatic Sea, and it's beautiful, man. Like you look down in the water, you can see all the way to the bottom. There's like nothing that's making it murky or dirty or anything. And then the beach itself is just like it's just beautiful.
That's awesome, man. Did you take your son out there?
Yep.
Dude, I've never seen someone have more fun with their kid than you just scrolling through your Instagram, man. You guys have a blast.
Well, the thing is, it's just me, my wife, and my son. So we have a lot of one-on-one time. Plus, I just enjoy them so much.
Yeah, it's cool to see that. And obviously, you and your family just moved to Champaign. You're on staff at the University of Illinois. Being a Chicago-based podcast, we were super excited to have you. And I thought, man, a lot of people know the name Ed Ruth, but the backstory maybe not as much. And so I found it interesting that your freshman year of high school, you went into the district's red hot record, but actually didn't even qualify for state your freshman year. Is that right?
I did I qualify my second? I want to say that I did, but honestly, I don't think I did either. Like, your guess is as good as mine. I'm sorry, I don't remember. I don't really remember that.
Well, I just thought it was interesting because then the next year you have a breakout year as a sophomore in high school, and the rivalry with Quentin Wright kind of starts. I don't know if it's a rivalry, but just you guys had a bunch of matches. But
we had a nice little rivalry in there.
What was the talk us through your sophomore year, kind of making that jump to getting down to Hershey and ultimately making it on the podium?
I mean, like my sophomore year is when I kind of figured out, I was like, okay, I got a little talent for this. I'm the only guy on the team who made it this state. So I'm like, that should mean something. But it was, yeah, man, I feel like my sophomore year is where like I really kind of like buckled down, and I started just kind of getting into my workouts. My mom was really helpful too. She was going around looking for guys to help me train, and she would find this guy, bring him over early in the morning. I had to get up like before school and then go run on the treadmill. But when I took it serious, that's when I was like, okay, yeah, I definitely see a future in this. I see myself doing this in college. And that's why everything just kind of like started falling into place after that.
So were you the first one in your family that wrestled?
Yeah.
Got it. And so your mom, didn't have a lot of experience with it, but she was out there looking for workout partners for you, like throughout high school, you said?
Well, she was finding coaches. So she was like, oh, we found this coach here. We find this coach there. And by the end of it, man, I probably was coached by like half of Pennsylvania. So like I had Buxton as a coach. Then I had Mariah, Chris Pryor. I had Bob, Coach D. There was just so many. And the thing that really helped me out a lot was I had so many coaches to pull from, and they all taught me a different way, and they all had different things that were more important to them. And I guess that really helped my style, because instead of me just kind of taking on something and then kicking the other thing out, I just kept adding everything, adding it. And then it just kind of, instead of me just like completely readjusting my whole style, it's more like I was making like tiny little adjustments, but each time it got a little bit better.
And so you just kind of took everything you could from folks. And at the practice itself in high school, were you challenged often, or was it something where you were kind of the class of the room, so to speak?
When I was in high school, I didn't really feel like I was that much challenged in my at the public school that I was at. But when I first started out, when I was in elementary, I started out at CD. And over there, all those guys were beating me. And then my mom would also take me out of my the Susquehanna High School room, and then I would go over to it was called Rising Star, which was another club. And then there was another club called in Cumberland Valley that I would go out and I would just wrestle with those guys. And those guys, those guys gave me a real challenge. Like a lot of those guys, some of them were beating me. Other guys were just right there with me, and I was just almost neck and neck with them.
And did you wrestle a lot of freestyle in the summers?
No. I didn't like freestyle too much. I really didn't like Greco, but I did it. I never placed at Fargo though, actually.
So you went though all 3 years or all 4 years of high school?
I think I went 3 years of high school, but I never placed.
Wow.
Yep, never placed.
But your sophomore and junior years of high school, I had read on like PA Power that you were undefeated both years going in, and both years you had a showdown with Quentin Wright in the semis. So let's just talk through that a little bit. I mean, because obviously you guys were on a college team together, and both ended up being national champs. But man, that's just how deep the Pennsylvania tournament is. What do you remember about those semifinal matchups?
Man, I just remember looking at Quentin Wright thinking like, man, this cat is long. Just had these long gangly legs and long arms. And I was like, geez. and it's funny because every time I wrestled him, it's like you don't have anybody that's gonna actually help you get ready for Quentin Wright. Nobody has those body dimensions or move or wrestle like him. So every time I would go out there and wrestle, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna leave it all on the table and see what happens. but those were fun times for me, honestly, because I could look in the paper and I would see my picture and they would be like, oh, Ruth going to States. And everybody was just kind of waiting for that matchup to happen. So that was kind of cool.
Man, I could just only imagine if you were a Pennsylvania wrestling fan, knowing that you guys met in the semis your sophomore year. And from what I read, you were kind of a surprise, took out a guy in the quarters who had gotten second the year before. And then your junior year, it's like, oh shit, here's the big rematch. And, brackets are announced at state. Lo and behold, you guys meet up again in the semis. So I got to imagine those were just some crazy matchups back at Hershey.
They were.
So how did you end up going to Blair as a senior?
My coach, Marat Tomyov, he was teaching the club. It was him and Chris Pryor. They were teaching the club. It was called Iron Eagle. And he used to go to Blair. He knew Buxton and everything. So he kind of got me in contact with Buxton. I talked with him. And then I went out and I actually saw the school. I wrestled around with the guys on the team. And I just really liked it. So, we got to talking, and then they sent me out there, and then we worked out the whole situation where I was able to attend there and go to school. But I only did 1 year because usually they expect you to do like another post-grad year or a repeat year when you go there. But I was like, no, I just want to do 1 year and that's it.
And did you live there?
I was boarding there.
Oh, wow. What is that experience like living with all these kids who outside of the wrestling team, a lot of them are just from all over the world, right?
Oh man, it's crazy because it's just like college, because there was a lot of Chinese kids there. There was a lot of Chinese kids. There was some black. They were like you said, they were all over the world. But it was just so different because I never lived away from home. I never went. To me, this was like a forever. What do you call that? Forever sleepover.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, I never have to come home. I was like, this is crazy. And they put us on a block schedule, which is like just like college things. It wasn't a uniform school, but there was a dress code. So we had to wear ties or some type of collared shirt, khaki pants. So it was a big life changer for me. It was like, man, this is the real deal. I'm like at a school where they like, what I mean? Like when you're in public school and then you go to private school and it's a private boarding school, it's like world of difference, man. World of difference. I, mean, I wasn't ready for it, but I just kind of adjusted.
How long did it take you?
Man. Probably like my half the year, half that school year. Just because it was weird, because like when you have the block schedule, you go to school like when I was in public school, I already had my whole schedule, my whole routine, everything was worked out. But when I was doing the block schedule, it's like, okay, so I go to this class on Monday and Tuesday, then I go to this one on only Tuesdays and Fridays, and this one, and then it just kind of threw me off because I was like, man, I'm always looking at my schedule. I'm always trying to keep up with this, and I'm always late to something because because you're like, man, I finally got a week. You're like, I finally got a minute to take a break. Then you're just sitting there watching the movie. You're like, damn, I got a class. What I mean?
And you guys would have to eat dinner together too, right?
Yeah, we had like regular school lunches where the whole school would eat, but then there was I think it was Thursday night dinners where they would have the whole school. Everybody would dress up in formal attire, and we'll go into the main dining hall, and then the whole school would be there, all the grades, and then they would have teachers sitting at the end of every table, and then everybody would just sit there, conversate, eat food. We all had the same thing.
Dude, it kind of sounds like the Hogwarts Hall in like the Harry Potter movie.
Yeah, it was a lot like that. It was.
And so what about the great Jeff Buxton? He's been on the show. You know, he's just one of the greatest coaches I think that we've had at the high school level, maybe ever. Just an amazing guy. What about his philosophy really stuck with you as you went into college?
Man, he gave me so much. I can't even tell you how much he gave me. But he just had such a good way of like teaching. It's just he made it stick. And I had a lot of coaches that would teach me something. I just couldn't get the technique or whatever. But when Buxton showed you, he just knew what to tell you and what to kind of focus on, just to kind of get that talk, just to get you to lock in the technique. And I feel like when I was at Penn State, whenever somebody would show me something, like I literally would think about it and break it down the way that Buxton would do it. Like I was like, okay, how would Buxton think about this? How would he break this down? Like how would he try to put this technique into someone, you know?
And so is it like the way he like broke it down into different steps, or would you guys just drill it in different ways?
He will break it down into steps, but then like he will make us drill. I just remember every time I was in there, I just didn't want to upset Buxton. I would drill hard. I was like, I'm not getting hit today. But I would drill hard all the time. But it was just his demeanor too. Like he didn't let a guy come in and just drag ass and drag everybody else down. He was like, you know what? Before you even get into the room, everybody has their shoes on. Everybody has their shoes tied up. It's not like you're getting here at practice time and then you're gonna start practicing. Then you're gonna start tying up your shoes. He was like, no, you get everything correct by the time you hit the door, and then when you're in the room, it's nothing but wrestling. And he was really good at just setting everybody up mentally, just saying, this is wrestling time. Everything else doesn't matter. Just get your ass out there and wrestle.
Man, I love how he doesn't let guys in the room until they're ready, like got their shoes on, but mentally too.
Yep.
That's amazing. And so, yeah, I mean, everything you think about Buxton is he just makes you become more of a professional. Like he's just all about the business, you know, gets things done. So you start wrestling for him. Was your debut tournament that Ironman tournament that year?
That was one of them.
Man.
Honestly, I think that was the one that was in the beginning. I think that was the first one that we wrestled. And that one, I didn't really know what I was walking into. I was like, what the hell is Ironman? Because that was my first time ever going there. I did not know about it. And then when they just threw us in it, and then my mom was like, if you win this, then you'll be #1 in the country for your weight class. And I was like, oh, so that's Ironman. So of course I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and win it. And I won it.
It's funny. Some guys we have on here who were at your level, you know, super dominant. They knew everything about everybody. But then there's guys like you where you were, you know, known to say, I don't know much about the guy I'm wrestling. And even so much to say that, like, you know, you weren't even like super detailed on Cael's background before he got to Penn State.
No.
And so like going into the Ironman, you weren't like a guy who knew everybody in the bracket. You just kind of showed up and went for it.
Just showed up and went for it.
Love it.
It's just a better way to attack anything in life. Like when you're just too bogged down by the details, then you just think too much. And this is a whole bunch of noise and rabble that just kind of comes into your head and you're paying attention to all the wrong things. So I'm like, you know, when I went out there, I just focused on myself and just getting better and having fun.
And you know, had a great senior year, rolled through, you know, I wouldn't say rolled through the Ironman, but, you know, that's a great tournament. Won the Ironman. And this is after you had never placed higher than 4th in the PA state tournament. Like, that's how tough that tournament is. And then you come out here for a national schedule and you win the Ironman. It's like, God, Pennsylvania is so deep. You know, it's like crazy.
There's a lot of hidden gems in there.
Mm-hmm. Guys are like, you know, never make it out to... Kind of reminds me of like Dagestan. I'm sure there's a ton of guys in Dagestan that just never make it out who are on the level with a lot of guys who are at the World Championships.
Yeah.
So you end up going to Penn State, obviously, but I love how when you initially committed there, it wasn't even when Cael was the head coach. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. I committed to Troy Southern.
And talk about learning about Cael coming in. Like, was it during the summer you found out he was coming in, or like, how did that all transpire?
I committed to Penn State because I remember I think I signed a letter of intent, and then there was this whole debacle where they were like, your coach just got fired, and they're bringing in a new coach, and I'm like, who are they bringing in? And they're like, oh, you might have one of the Brands brothers. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. You know, they work hard. I work hard. I can deal with that. Then they were like, oh, you can have somebody else. And then lastly, they were like, oh, you can have Cael. And I'm like, who is Cael? They're like, bro, you're wearing, I had his shoes sitting right on the desk behind me. And they're like, who is Cael? They're like, bro, he's wearing his shoes. And then I didn't actually watch videos on him until I got there, and then I wrestled him, and then you know, of course, he beat me up, and then I'm like, who the hell is you know? I go online, I go look at his videos, watching him just dominate everybody. I'm like, oh, so this is my coach, you know? So it's kind of a situation I fell into.
So what was that first workout? Was it like a summer workout, or like you had been in school and you guys were just getting in the room the first time you scrapped with Cael, like in a wrestling coaching?
Yeah, it was just like during the summertime, and then he came in because he came in my redshirt year. So
so you already there a year?
I was there. No, I got there. My redshirt year is when he came in.
Okay.
Because I committed to the first coach, and then as they were firing him and bringing in a whole new coaching regime, that's when I first got there to Penn State. So I was never there when Matt Derlin was there. I mean, I wasn't there when Troy Sutherland was there. I came there afterwards. So I had Cael the whole time.
The whole time, and it's just amazing that you're feeling good about yourself going into your freshman year, and you work out with him at a practice, and then like what kind of feel does he bring when you're wrestling Cael?
It's weird because he's a guy who keeps such good position that you just make a mistake just wrestling him. It's almost like a chess player, you know. As soon as you make one move on the chessboard, then he's like checkmate, and you're like, what the hell? You know what I mean? It was like that kind of. I was like, every time I step my foot somewhere, he ankle picked me, or you know, he finds some way to throw me to my back, and he wouldn't even be tired after the whole thing. Usually, I'm used to getting guys tired, and you know, he would just roll, do his thing, and then he'll be done. But it wasn't just him. It was my other coach named Casey. And Casey, I was like, you know what, before the end of the year, because I wanted to start small. I was like, before the end of the year, I'm gonna beat Casey. And then I'm gonna go after Cael. You know, I was looking at my coaches. I was like, I'm trying to get all these guys. And I remember, I'll never forget it. Casey held me down for about a half hour straight, because I remember looking at the clock. I'm like, damn, I'm still on bottom. I look at the clock again. I'm like, I'm still on bottom. And then he finally lets me up, and I'm just like defeated. And he just looks at me. He's like, you could be a national champ. And man, I thought it was the biggest load of BS I've heard in my life. I was like, man, I was like, a national champ would have got up. Man.
Had you thought about that before, like being a national champ?
My whole goal was to become an All-American, because the deal that I had when I first went to Penn State, it wasn't on a full ride. It was about 80%. And they told me that if I become All-American, then they will bump me up to full ride. And, you know, and Cael was an awesome guy about that. He even honored that deal and everything. But yeah, when I first came in, it wasn't like everything was set up. You know, I still had to earn it in a way.
But like, you weren't one of those guys that came in saying 4-time national champ, 4-time Big Ten champ. You came in confident, but just, had set your goals initially on becoming an All-American to get that full ride.
Yeah, I was like, I just want to be an All-American. But as I was on the team, it was, and I'm a competitive person. I don't always admit that, but I am a competitive person. And I knew that as I was wrestling with my teammates on the team, I was like, I didn't want to be the only guy in the lineup that would like lose. I just didn't want to be the weak link. I was like I'm out here getting pinned and everybody else is winning. I was like, I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to bring something to the team rather than just be the guy just coasting along for a ride.
How did Cael talk about goal setting?
He would just have us write out our goals. He talked to us about it. He would sit us down and be like, okay, what do you want to do this year? Like, what are your goals? Like, do you want to, be a good wrestler, just get good grades, get stronger, get bigger? And they would just sit you down, talk to you, and then they all just trying to help you work slowly towards those goals.
And then like, once you actually get in the room, who were like some of your 3-man groups when you first got there? Like Quentin Wright, was like David Taylor there? I mean, what were some of those scraps like early on?
I wrestled a lot with, I think his last name was Irwin.
Okay.
Irwin, I want to say Irwin James. He's going to be so mad if he hears this podcast. I got his name wrong. I believe. But it was him, Dan Valamont, Quentin was there as well. So I always wrestle in that group right there. And then later on, like as the years progressed, it was like me and Quentin. There was me and Matt Brown, me and Morgan McIntosh. I was always like with the guys around my weight, but higher.
Mm-hmm. And Coach K, Coach Cunningham doesn't look like a guy's that big, but he would go in there and just roll with you guys right through. I mean, he was that solid.
He's not big. He's just freakishly strong. Like, he's just like really freakishly strong. When you have that guy on top of you, you'll feel it. You'll be like, man, he feels almost superhuman.
Dude, whenever I ask someone, I've had a couple of guys from Penn State on, Phil Davis, Aaron Ansbach, and I'm like, bro, what's the secret in there? They go, don't sleep on Casey Cunningham because he might be the guy who's making it all go.
Yeah.
So if I look at your career from afar, some of the big turning points we talked about, like sophomore year, getting on the podium at Pennsylvania State's, senior year, going to Blair, and then a big turning point was after your redshirt freshman year, you come in as a redshirt freshman, make the lineup, and then you end up taking out Mac Lunas. I think that was early in that year. But like, what was like the big transition between your freshman year and then your redshirt freshman year that ultimately put you on the third place podium at the NCAA tournament?
I was watching more videos, but I started watching, I was watching wrestling videos, and then I started watching like different videos, like what are some of the other ones? Like I would watch like boxers. Boxers would run around the ring and they would be light on their feet for about a good half hour. And I'm like, man, how can they do that? And I'm just on this mat for 7 minutes and I'm exhausted. And I started paying attention to their workouts, their conditioning. Then I just started, and like I remember boxing was the first thing that I looked at. And then after that, I just kind of started branching out. I just went into a lot of weird directions, but it just seemed like there was something to pick up from everywhere. And then when I was, especially over the summer when I was running camps, I had the opportunity of like running so many camps, and that I would just teach the kids, and then I'll wrestle around with the kids. It would be like a half hour just like getting on the mats and wrestling. And then once I got back to college, after that whole summer, since I've been wrestling all summer long, I just felt like I knew everything. Like I just knew the technique that much better because I was teaching it all summer long. And then I was wrestling it, doing it. And then I came back to college and I just felt like, man, I got this. This is down pat.
They always say that, that when you become a coach, you understand it more. So that was something that really jumped out to you.
It's definitely true, because as a coach, I don't care about the results. When I go in the room, I just want this guy to get better. So I'm going in there, I'm trying everything. I'm more relaxed, and that's just the better way to wrestle. And when you're wrestling, you're competing, and then you never know what's going on. You're either cutting weight, this guy's too big, some guy's too small. You feel awful because you just didn't have breakfast that morning, or you're down to the end of your weight cut. You just don't have the weight. Like all that affects your training. And when I was a coach, or when I was just being a camp counselor, I could be as fat as I wanted to be. I could have a beer gut if I wanted to. It didn't matter. I was just out there wrestling. They had to carry my weight, and it made it a lot easier.
That's interesting that is what you attribute that to. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, you think about how in demand a Penn State wrestler must be for summer camps. You must have been going all the time.
I probably did it started at probably like 10 camps one summer, and then it kind of like would move up, 10 camps and 15. And it was just, and I would drive to them and then drive home, or fly to them and fly home.
And so like when you're driving home from a camp and like you're starting to like, your mind's starting to wander, were you a big guy who like visualized like matches, or like how would you like kind of think about things between the ears?
I think as soon as the year was over and it was summertime, I didn't think about wrestling at all. Like unless I was doing freestyle or something like that. Other than that, I wasn't thinking about wrestling. I was just trying to like be social, hang with my friends. But it helped a lot because it took my mind off of wrestling. That way, when I came back to it, I just felt fresh. I didn't feel like I was just constantly being beat over the head with the same technique. Like I could go to a camp, I could run the camp, like do the technique, think about it. And then after I left, like that was it. I wouldn't think about it, leave it alone. And then somebody else would call me for a camp, then I go out and do it again. But it was just like, it gave me a time to just keep taking those mental breaks. Cause some people are mentally always in wrestling, then their expectations of themselves get high. And then like, that's where all the anxiety and the hesitation comes from. And like, everything felt like it was new every single day. Cause it was just like, okay, I worked on this a few times, but I just learned something new because I've been doing it so many times. So now I'm gonna try something a little bit different. And I just kept adding, and taking those breaks whenever I needed them.
And you come back excited about it. You're not like dragging through another season because you've been thinking about it all summer.
Yeah, I really believe that a lot of guys get burnt out. They kind of just wrestling just becomes this monotonous thing because you're constantly like, how many guys look to change their style? They're always consistently trying to improve on the things that they know how to do. But that means doing the same thing that you've always been doing. But when I went there, I kept trying to change something and make it more my style, rather than have the coaches coach me into a certain cookie cutter type technique, which it works, because that's how they define wrestling. But everybody defines wrestling differently for themselves. And I was like, okay, well, so what's my definition of it? So then I took that out to the mat.
And I've heard you say in past interviews that Penn State and the coaches there, they were big on like letting you kind of figure it out, giving you some guide rails, but really it was on you to own it and kind of track your development through the season.
Yeah, and I like that because it like, instead of just having something hammered into me, it was like, it was material that I understood and I knew it well. And they gave me time to wrestle with it. And then on top of it, they was like, okay, so this is what you like to do. So this might help. And they would add more onto it just from their perspective. And I was like, I really like that coaching style because it's just like, I believed in it more than I would believe in like, oh, snap double leg. Okay, well, you told me to snap double leg. I believed in it more because I was like, okay, well, when I snap double leg, now I'm gonna snap, move them a little bit, double, but then I'll fake it and double again. And then I started adding my own steps into it.
I love the idea of just owning it, and that way you take more pride in it if it's your own, and you're kind of developing it yourself. One of the coolest things and the last thing I'll ask you about Penn State, but one of the coolest things I remember from Cael first getting there is the bet he made with you guys that if you guys won the team title, he would come out of retirement. Talk us through this whole thing, because this is one of the craziest things I remember. When did you hear about it for the first time?
I heard about it when he had the singlet on.
Bro, think about that. Retire in 2004 and come back, was it 2011, I think? And he steps back out there. It
still makes the world team. Beats out Herbert, which was crazy. I was like, man, he still got it.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Did you, after you won your first one, you got third as a freshman, one as a sophomore, one as a junior. Were you someone who, you were so dominant? Did you have trouble finding motivation to keep the edge going like your senior year? And I mean, you still dominated, but was that something you ever had like internal discussions about with yourself?
I did get to a rough patch. There was a time in my season where I was just like, man, this is just so like wearing on me. And I think it was my junior year. And, the coaches, they were pretty understanding about it. They're like, you know what, if you need to take a week off, take a week off. So, and they would just kind of give me the room and space just to kind of recalibrate myself.
Yeah.
And I remember Cael came over to me one time, just sat down. He's like, look, you look tired. He's like, just get out of here, go recollect yourself, and then come back fresh.
Man, that's amazing that they would allow that to happen. I mean, not surprising, but knowing how successful they've been. When you were like at the biggest of stages, I was watching your match from the 2014 Worlds against Mohammedan, or at the NCAA finals where like stakes are highest. What's going through your mind like the 10 minutes before a match? Are you someone who's trying to stay empty mind, or do you have like a routine that you kind of go through to get yourself ready?
I try to stay empty. If I do think of anything or if I'm trying to go over anything, I always visualize like myself doing my moves and then doing it completely, like all the way, like every single step. Like if I'm doing a high crotch, I'm like, okay, high crotch. And I'm thinking about the smaller details, like shoulders in the crotch, hips are in, my chest is up. And I'm like, and then I would just feel myself doing that. But then right before the match, I would just try to block out everything. Because I like when I walked out there, I was like, anytime that I walk out there, I'm only me. And I only prepared up to this point. So I can only perform. And what happens, happens. The decision's already made. And like it just helped me go out there and just have fun.
Man, that's what it looked like when you were wrestling, just effortlessly flowing through positions, cradles from everywhere. And so as a lot of people know, after you were done wrestling, you ended up going into MMA. Where were you training at, like when you were in the thick of your Bellator schedule? Was it AKA or?
AKA.
You were.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about just that gym. I mean, you go from one world-class gym to another. What was like the atmosphere inside AKA when you were out there?
It was awesome. They have a great competitive atmosphere out there. They spar like 3 times out the week. So it'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there would be a spar. And you know, those guys, they always came ready to bang. It's like, it was almost like walking into the Penn State room. You know, everybody was ready to go. And the coach could be like, okay, guys, easy day today. And somebody would still be over there just teeing off on each other. But you know, you can't teach that. You can't teach that competitiveness. And that's what they had in there. You know, and Penn State had a lot of that too. Any guy who came in knew that, hey, even to be our backup, you better be a good wrestler. Because then somebody will just eat you alive every single day in the room.
God, dude. Then you factor in whenever Khabib was in town. How often would he be out there?
Whenever he had his fight. So I think there was about 2 or 3 times I was in there when he was in there. I got a chance to spar with him, move around with him. It was awesome every time he came in, because he would come in, then he would have like a whole entourage of his brothers and friends and guys that he brought over from Dagestan. All these guys could fight or wrestle or do something, you know. So like whenever he came, there was plenty of practice partners in the room.
So he would just arrive with like an army of Dagestani fighters, basically.
Pretty much.
God, and like you said, any one of them is going to be able to do something, you know, at a high level. God.
Yep.
Have you ever been over to Dagestan or Russia?
No, I've been to I went to Vladikavkaz, I believe that's in Russia, and then I was over in Kazan.
Okay. Now, obviously, you had a great MMA career. Now you're into coaching at the University of Illinois. How did this come about? Like, did you have any idea, you know, this time last year that you'd be in Champaign right now?
No idea. This everything just kind of fell into place. It kind of seems like that happens a lot in my life, but but I left California. I drove from California all the way to I was actually headed back to PA, and I got a call from one of my sponsors, and he redirected me, and I ended up in North Carolina. And he knew the college team out there, so I started talking with the college coach. He brought me on. I was teaching for a little bit. I was coaching with those guys, and I was going to continue doing that. And then I got a call from one of the coaches out here, Mike Poeta, and then he just, you know.
Did you know him before that?
I didn't know him before that. It was just, I met him, and he's one of those, I don't know, there's just certain people that you meet and you know that you're like, we're going to be good friends, and we're going to have, and like, you just want to be around that person. And when I met him, I was like, man, I felt that strongly about it. I was like, I met you at a certain time. Like, I met you at a time where I was kind of in this transition of like leaving one sport. Cause like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, I can continue fighting. I can go back into wrestling. I can compete wrestling wise, or I can just do coaching or whatever, but I had options. Mm-hmm. And when he just came along and asked me at the perfect time, like literally at the right time. Cause I was like, maybe I might coach. And then he's like, do you want to coach? And then I came out, I met him, I talked with him, I met his whole family. And it was just like, I was like, this is the next step.
That's so exciting, man. And I got to imagine you probably didn't have a lot of thought about the University of Illinois before this. Like, had you ever been there? Did you ever like experience the campus?
Only when we came out here to wrestle.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But it's like usually when I choose a place, I try not to choose it just because it's a good place. I try to choose it because of the people. So I'm like, if I can go out here and I can talk to people and meet people, and like, I'm like, that's awesome. I was like, that's exactly what I want to be, because I can create strong relationships here. I can trust in these people. I can trust in their personalities, you know. And that was like when I chose out here, I was like, okay, well, there's a lot of great people out here. I came out, met the team. There's a lot of great people out here.
Yeah, no, it's a great group of guys, and you know, Illinois, we're proud of our high school wrestling in Illinois, and so to see Poeta get the job, to see someone like yourself come in, we're all really excited to see how the program's going to build and grow. What has like jumped out to you just since you've been working with the team and working with the guys?
Well, a lot of these guys, they get a lot of their work in on their own. It's not there was I mean, like I've been on teams where I'm like, dude, these guys don't work out at all. It's appalling. I'm surprised this is even a wrestling team, But this is one of those teams where like every time I walk into the room, there's one other guy that's actually in there training or doing something. And that makes me really proud because I'm like, you know what, that makes my job as a coach a lot easier because now I don't have to reach out to you and make sure these guys are getting their workouts in. They're just kind of doing it on their own. I just gotta kind of like make sure they're getting a recovery in and they're being smart about everything.
And like when you look at your role, would you say, are you going to be doing some recruiting, mostly in the room work, like running practices? How does that going to break up, do you think?
Well, I'm trying to cover all my roles, recruiting, in the practice room, working with the guys, and I'm always one of those guys. I believe that if you're an athlete, that you're also like, like a sensei and a master.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever the student would come in, they clean, they train, they clean afterwards, they kept the place clean, and I was always a full believer in stuff like that. I come in, I'll train with the guys, I'll clean the room, help them clean the room, keep everything organized. And then, so I just like to cover all the areas.
Well, I can't wait to see you in there and to see you on the sideline at the duels. And it's sweet. Illinois is going to be wrestling at what we know as not Huff Hall, Assembly Hall. It's called the State Farm Center now, but the duels used to be at Huff Hall, and so that's going to be switched. I know there's talks of potentially fundraising. Nice. Huh?
I said that's going to be nice.
That's big nice.
Thing. Yeah,
bro. I mean, as an Illinois man, Assembly Hall is where the state tournament's at every year, right? So that's the only time you see wrestling there is for the high school state tournament. When half mile away, the Fighting Illini are wrestling in Huff Hall. So I think that's a big momentum boost. Now, when you think about kind of stepping away from the conversation that we've been having, I had a couple one-off questions I've been dying to hit you with. So I figured we could wind down with that if that's good with you.
That's fine. Shoot.
Have you got your hands on any of Poeta's family's butcher meat yet? And if so, how does this compare to...
Oh, man. The Italian sausage is bomb.
Dude. I've heard it's phenomenal. I've never had it myself, so I had to get your thoughts on it.
Oh, it's good, man. You got to try something. If you ever get the chance, you got to go try something, man. He had a cookout the other day and made a big old thing of Italian sausages. Oh, man, they were so good. So good. I didn't even know meat could taste like that.
They're legendary up here. I've yet to go, but I may that may be the final straw to get me over the hump.
You gotta do yourself a favor, man. You gotta go out there.
For real. And I wanted to ask you about this because I remember the first time I heard about you getting into MMA, it was when a picture of you and John Jones surfaced. And so I just wanted to ask you about, what you remember about wrestling with John Jones back in the day and like what kind of feel he brought.
Man, I just remember he was long. He was so long. Like usually when I'm shooting, I can just get down on the knee, reach and grab a leg. Like him, I had to actually shoot to get to his leg. And it's very it's not normal for me to have to cover ground, but like as soon as he would put his hands on me and just kind of like scoot his legs back a little bit, it felt like his legs were just like at least a foot from beyond my reach. But like his reach is crazy. I think my reach is probably like 80 across, 80 or 79. I think his is like about 82 or 85.
God, dude, that's crazy.
Like, insane length. And then on top of it, he's like crazy tall. I'm like, every time I'm trying to snap him down, like it's almost like I'm trying to like reach up and like hug my dad or something. I try to pull his head down and set up my shots. But he has a great feel though. Like he's still surprisingly very athletic.
And I love hearing that. Like when you were fighting, you would go back to your wrestling more so than a lot of wrestlers do. Like a lot of wrestlers seem to like get away from it and do more striking in the cage or in the octagon. Not everyone, but you see that a lot. I've heard you say that you found like new wrestling techniques that were more fighting focused when you were in the thick of it.
Yeah. But I mean, like just wrestling overall in fighting is different. It's nothing like the fighting it's nothing like regular wrestling. I can't do my setups or like snap a guy down and look for an ankle pick. Like in fighting, usually it's ruled by doubles and single legs, you know, like, and if I do get that single leg, I got to make sure I get your feet off the ground. Because once we start getting those scrambling positions and you're all sweaty and everything, you don't have shoes on, you lose a lot of takedowns. These guys just slip out.
And the cage has got to be so different, right? Like the clinch against the cage.
Yeah, that changed a lot too. Usually I'm used to some guys like falling down. Like other guys will wait till they get to the cage, and they like it because then they can use the cage to kind of brace themselves. They get a breather, or they'll wedge. There's like a little like a little section where you can like wedge your foot in between the cage and the mat, and then guys can't like pull your leg out from underneath you. So there's like all two little types of tricks in there.
That's some inside baseball right there to really.
Oh, yeah. Real inside stuff. So whenever you see that guy sitting along the cage and his pinky toes missing, it's wedged right there in between the canvas and the cage.
And what you know, in the realm of MMA, you know, I know you did some jiu-jitsu, and I don't know if you're still doing it, but when you got in the gi, like what was one of the, because I'm getting into jiu-jitsu and the gi was always very confusing for me. Now I've just like learned to accept it. But like, what were some of your first impressions of jiu-jitsu in the gi, like your first year into it?
I hated it my first year, just because like every time I was going with anybody, like especially a black belt, they would take advantage of holding on to the grips.
Oh, so annoying.
Yeah, and I just couldn't, like, I would go for a perfect double leg, grab them, take them down, and then they would just grab something, like anything, like my sleeve, and I just couldn't get my arm free, or I couldn't just like keep progressing until I found my submission. It was always like, oh, I had to get his toe out of my lapel, or I had to get his fingers out of my sleeve, and they'll grab your sleeve and then they roll their fingers in there. And it's like, they got little monkey grips, man. And the flexibility that you have in jiu-jitsu is just nothing compared. Like wrestling doesn't compare at all. Like we can't do with our legs like some of the things that guys in jiu-jitsu can do. Like their flexibility is incredible. And when I was going for like, I mean, like just having my regular guard was hard in the beginning because I couldn't lock my legs around people. I was like, I needed some more. I had tight hip flexors at the time, so you know, if I had a guy that was kind of like heavyweight or about 200 pounds and he had a wide waist, I couldn't lock my legs around him, so I had to like play butterfly guard the whole time.
Dude, that's funny you say that because you know, locking guard is hard, but like let alone some guys who are throwing legs across for triangles. It's like, how do they do that without their legs cramping up at first? It's such a weird position to put your legs in.
It really is, but you just build up the that conditioning. It's just like with boxing. When you're throwing your first couple punches, after those first 10 punches, your shoulders are screaming. And it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. You know, some of those guys would sit there and they will be upside down on their back like for 10 minutes. And that's the whole road. That's their whole technique and strategy.
They live there, bro. It's like,
yeah. I'm like, yo, I'm so tired. Just throwing my legs up twice. I'll try to get you in the triangle.
Do you still roll at all?
Yeah, I still roll.
Gi or no gi?
No gi for right now. I haven't put the gi back on for a while. That gi gets hot.
Dude, it does. It's like you either just got to accept it and use it as a tool. And, you know, some of the lapel chokes are pretty sweet, but at the beginning, you're just thinking in your head, you're like, man, if you couldn't hold on to my gi, I would be destroying you right now. You're just stalling with this gi hold. But then that just gets in your head and you're getting so frustrated. But yeah, I you know, that video of you rolling at one of the IBJF Pan Ams or something always sticks in my head because I'm like, why would he not just do no gi if he's going to be fighting anyway? Like, why did you go gi?
Well, they told me that because they said if you do gi, you'll learn all the proper holds. You'll learn you'll learn jiu-jitsu, and then it'll be that much easier to kind of tie your wrestling and everything together. So I wanted to do everything like down to his his core fundamentals. So I did everything in sections. Like I tried to learn boxing by itself, like just pure boxing with pure boxers. And then I would do jiu-jitsu with just pure jiu-jitsu guys, and I would do the gi and all that. And most of the wrestlers hated it. Yeah. But I was like, you know what? If I'm going to get better at it, I'm just going to do this with the gi, because I know that if I can do this with the gi and get better and graduate with the gi, then I'll do better with the no gi.
Yeah.
So I was trying to get my belts through the gi.
So you were like taking it serious, like just going through the steps and being a true jiu-jitsu player, essentially.
Yeah.
Wow. That's exciting, man. Well, I just love that you're in the state of Illinois. We're going to be seeing you around high school tournaments, college tournaments, and obviously all the Illinois duels. Can't wait to get down there and meet you in person, man. Ed, Ruth, thank you for your time, my friend.
Hey, no problem, man. Thanks for having me on.
Have a great day.
You too.
That's the end of this episode of Wrestling Changed My Life. Thank you so much for tuning in. To see video clips from this interview, go to Instagram at Wrestling Changed My Life. As always, Wrestling Changed My Life is proudly presented by Spartan Combat. Please go to SpartanCombat.com to support this show.